Good afternoon. So, as lots of you know, I finished my first GT this past weekend. Great experience, highly recommended. And I wanted to take a minute to go through some different units and some other things and talk about how they actually went. It's one thing to theory craft, it's another thing to put units on the table and actually roll dice. So, in this one, I wanted just to go over some, like, the battle tactics and how I think about all the battle tactics that are relevant to a big wild list that has an Iron Jaws general, and how I feel like they actually went. So let's take a look. So S tier battle tactics are going to be battle tactics that like they're almost free. When I tell my opponent what my battle tactic is and what I need to do to accomplish it, they give me a look. Like, really? Like, that's it? And I say, yeah, like, that's it. A tier are ones that are totally achievable. Like, you can sort of plan to get these, and the A tier ones are the ones that you're looking for, right? Like, when I'm choosing a battle tactic, I'm gonna look at the A tier ones and be like, are there any of these that are easily achievable this turn? Because if they're not, then I'll default back to my S tier ones. B is more situational. Like, you need something to happen. Like, for example, Squish to Puny Gits is only relevant if your opponent still has battle line on the table, right? And then you need to kill all their battle lines. So if you look and you're like, oh, hey, what are your battle line units? Oh, it's only this one left that I'm about to charge into, and that only has one model left. Perfect. I'll pick that one, right? Like, and then C tier are ones where, like it's really not likely. It's really not likely to happen. If they do happen, it's great. So I would recommend that when you go into a game that you actually have like these things planned out, like which ones you're going to be looking for, and that you try to achieve them from C tier to S tier as a general principle. You want to try to keep your easiest battle tactics. You want to save them, if at all possible, right? When possible, because of course that's not always possible. So I'll just quickly sort of go through them and what they are and why I feel like they're ranked the way that they are. So wait for it, lads, is S tier. You need to start your turn with 24 WA points and end with more than 30. So that's only 6 WA points. Here's the crazy thing. You can roll your WA points for your turn before you pick this battle tactic. So if you are if you have 24, if you start your turn with 24 wall points, which would be the minimum, if you roll a d6 for your general and you get a 6, you go, okay, I'll pick wait for it, lads. Because it's you can only take it this turn, right? If you roll a 1 and all your other units are dead that are gonna produce wall points, and you're not gonna be doing any charges, then you don't pick it. You pick a different one. Your battle tactic should almost be the last thing that you choose at the start of your hero phase. You should do all the other things before you pick your battle tactic. Get as much information as you possibly can before you pick your battle tactic. But fantastic. Sneak up is probably the best battle tactic in the book. Whenever I deployed, I only had 2 Cruel Boys units, and I just deployed them within 3 of terrain. And then throughout the entire game, all of the games, right, I always had this back pocket one. Against Korn, I think I used it because he had already killed my Killbow and he was threatening to kill my Gobsprak, and I was like, oh, okay, like I'll use it now because if I don't use it now, I won't be able to use it. But it's like sneak up is like free. You're just going to be like on a turn when there's nothing else to get, you're just going to use sneak up. Easy game. It's better in Big Wall than it is in Cruel Boys. Magical Dominance was a really good turn 1 turn 1 pick. Lots of the time, like I was trying to make sure that Gobsprak was within 30 of the enemy casters whenever, like during deployment, whenever possible for turn 1, but it wasn't always possible. So when it wasn't, like the spells in Big Wa are good, but not essential. When they go off, it's nice, but if they don't go off, that's also fine. I just made sure that I put my Weird Knob Shaman general back out of 30, so that turn 1 I could teleport something with a Master of Magic reroll, and if I wanted to, I could call it there and say like, oh, you didn't unbind me, the end. So that one was pretty good too. And it was good later too, right? Like it was good later, or like sometimes you're just like, oh, I'm just gonna like cast this one spell and that's gonna be it. Or maybe all of my casters are outside of 12. And then even later in the game, when the Wurgog is using its Death Stare, like you're not casting there, and so all you have is Gobsprak and Master Magic Hand of Gork, right? So relatively easy. relatively easy. Definitely S tier. I looked for it on turn 1 whenever possible. So A tier. That's our turf now. That's the new Iron Jaws one. You need to have 2 or more friendly Iron Jaws units within 3 of the center of the battlefield. So this one was S tier if I was being aggressive. So against Lumineth, against Seraphon, this was a freebie. It was turn 1. It was like, I'm going to move my units forward to get ya. Right, I'm gonna Mighty Destroyer move, getcha, and I'm just gonna put units in the middle of the board, and I'll get this battle tactic easy. Where I'm not being aggressive, like against Nurgle, where I was sitting back and really waiting, this was not very useful. It was only good like later in the game if I was suddenly going on the offensive once my wall points built up, which that happened to be the case when I played against that Nurgle player. So I ended up getting it later in the game. But if you're playing very defensively, it's probably like a B. And if you're playing very aggressively, it's like an S. So when it's good, it's really good, right? If you're alpha striking, it's like, okay, that's our turf now, turn 1. Great. Intimidate the invaders, turn 2. Great. Intimidate the invaders is more friendly units wholly outside of your territory than friendly units within your territory. So again, if you're being super aggressive and you're going to move a bunch of units out of your territory, yeah, it's great. And it's like, it depends on the map too, right? Because in some maps, your territory is one quadrant. So it's actually pretty easy to get more units out of that territory, as opposed to one where the map is split in half and one half is yours and one half is your opponent. That one's a little bit harder. But still, like, even later in the game, you know, like a lot of units have died. You're moving your models up the table, right? You're trying to get your locusts on like objectives and what have you, right? But still relatively easy to get more than half out of your territory than in. So really good. And then led into the Maelstrom was really good. I like, maybe it's B tier, but I still think it's A tier. Your Maw Crusher and other units are always charging in. Like, I charged in with my Maw Crusher and Unit of Pigs at least 2 different games, but it's actually relatively easy. A Wurgog Prophet a War Chanter can actually hit pretty hard. Surprisingly, a War Chanter has 6 attacks, 3s and 3s, no rend, but with D3 damage. So while you're probably not getting a ton of them in, like, even hitting 3 can spike to 9 damage. So, I mean, I was a fan. It's, I think Hoarfrost is also pretty good for War Chanter as well. So, like, a War Chanter and a unit of Ardboys charging into a target, right? And, like, not killing that target, that's reasonable. Like, you can do that. It really wasn't that hard to find opportunities to get led into the Maelstrom. But I do appreciate how Nashtooth is really good for that battle tactic in particular. So getting down to, yeah, I mean, I think that I can't even remember where, like in what games, I failed battle tactics. I can't even remember. Against Khorne, I failed battle tactics against Khorne because Khorne was kicking my butt, and I was struggling to like, just to do anything, right? But yeah, I mean, Lumineth was a perfect game for scoring for me. Yep, easy peasy. Kind of going off on a little bit of a tangent here. One thing I thought was really interesting is that in a lot of my, like, when I play games with my friends, or when I play games on Tabletop Simulator with you know, folks in the Discord, you generally are like I'm more likely to play 5 rounds, or just to end the game, and right, and be like, oh, okay, like, I concede, right? Like, you won, I concede. But one thing I had to do at the tournament, which was interesting, was play out the game just verbally and complete the scoring for all 5 rounds. So that was something that was a little bit different for me. So what that meant was, like, if we ended on turn 3, like if we were 2.5 or 2 hours and 45 minutes and we're finishing game 3, then it's like, oh, okay, well, you know, like, I could probably get Surround and Destroy, because all that I would do is run like these units this way and those units that way, and teleport this unit over here, and get surround and destroy, right? Like suddenly you're not even playing the game anymore. You're just like trying to get these battle tactics because the game has ended, if that makes sense. So that was interesting. So like your battle tactics in the first 3 rounds, like getting your battle tactics in the first 3 rounds is important, is key. So squish to puny gets B tier. It's only good if your opponent only has 1 battle line left and you're sure you can kill them, and then it's awesome. But that actually happening in a game, especially in the first 3 rounds, is not super likely. And also your opponent could lose all their battle line units on their turn, and then, like there's nothing to get there. Reprisal means that you have to kill a unit that killed your general. In Big Wa, if you lose your general, you're screwed. You're screwed. So it's like you're already losing, So if it does happen, then you can strike back and get this battle tactic. But again, B tier because it's situational. Endless expropriation. So you complete this battle tactic at the end of your turn if either the following are true: the enemy unit has been destroyed, or the incarnate is wild. This is if you have to pick one enemy unit that summoned an endless spell that is on the battlefield or that is bonded to an incarnate and kill it. So again, situational because your opponent has to actually have these things. If they have to win endless spells and they don't have an incarnate, there's nothing to do. This is literally impossible. So, but when it does come up, like if, let's say you're playing Gits and they have a Malevolent Moon and cast by a Fungoid Cave Shaman, and you're planning, you can get into it and kill it this turn, right? Because it's relatively easy to kill. Like you can throw some pigs at it and Mighty Destroyers for a 3-inch charge. Then it's like, perfect. I'll take this one. I'll take Endless Expropriation. Surround and Destroy, same kind of idea. Like we do have some pretty quick units in the list, or in Big Y, I guess, in general. And it's not that tough to try to keep something like in the back line, like even our general, like within the back 6 inches, and then take the other side. And most of the time I found that I think I did accomplish this one once or twice in the tournament, but it was like my side of the board, their side of the board, and one of the flanks of the board, because I was teleporting in something into their back line. That was how I was like accomplishing this, right? It's like, okay, like I'm still sort of back far in my deployment zone. I'm going to send pigs into their deployment zone at the far back, and then I have something on the far right, like a unit of Ard Boys or something that I'm kind of running over there for this explicit purpose. So again, not great, but fine. Time to get stuck in is not good. The only way that you're going to get time to get stuck in, you can only get it on the first or the second turn, and every single model picked in your army have to be within 12 of an enemy unit at the end of the turn. It's only good if you're being alpha struck. And I don't really know how many alpha strike armies there are out there. And it's every model in your army, right? So you can't have something that's sort of off to the side, right? It all has to kind of be together, and they have to be in your face. So if they're just coming at you from one direction, you might not be within range. But I didn't play the Iron Jaws list, right? So it's like, but besides that, I don't really know how many like lists are that aggressive, and like Big Wa can be Alpha Strike. That's one of its strengths. I found. I think that if I learned any one thing from playing in the tournament about the list, about Big Wa specifically, is that you can just suddenly be an Alpha Strike list, right? You can teleport pigs, you can Mighty Destroyers, you can fasten, you can all these things, and you can suddenly be right in your opponent's face, and like you can be that aggressive when you want to be, right? You can still be that Iron Jaws orc list when you want to be. But like it's not like you're the aggressor. It's, I guess, what I'm trying to say most of the time. When there needs to be an aggressor, you can be an aggressor. So time to get stuck in. First turn, second turn. Like you really have to be playing something. You have to be deployed properly, and you have to be playing something. I guess if you know you're fighting against like a 1-drop Alpha Strike list, you can deploy in such a way where this is what you want, right? But I don't know. It just didn't. I never got it once. It never even really came up. I never really thought about it. If I was being aggressive, it was not even accomplishable, right? Because like I'm not bringing my generals, not going to be wholly within 12 of their like of any of their units, right? So wasn't really good. Never got it once. Didn't pay off. Magical Mayhem, again, S tier, or sorry, C tier. Pick one enemy unit on the battlefield. You complete this battle tactic if that unit is destroyed by a spell or the abilities of an endless spell. If you take Blizzard, if Blizzard is in your list, then I think this is better. If Blizzard is in your list, this is probably B tier, maybe A tier. Blizzard wasn't in my list. I had no endless spells. I had spells that could deal damage, but like not that I would even really want to cast. Like the Black Pit, a unit would have to be a low save and have few models left for me to knock it off. So it's like it's worse than just situational. It's situational, but it's not really gonna come up, right? It's not really gonna come up very like almost ever. And even if it did, it would be a relatively unreliable way. Like what if your spell gets unbound? Right? Like I'm not playing Seraphon. I don't have a whole bunch of spells and a bunch of endless spells. I'm not just throwing damage with magic out there all the time. So maybe if you had Blizzard, this would be better. But I don't even know. Like the Wargog Prophet has a spell that's a Horde Buster, but you roll dice for every model that's in the unit. So once the Horde is low, like if it started at 30, but now it's got 3, it's like you're only rolling 3 dice. So like I said, to Black Pit it would have to be a bunch of, stuff. And then what's left? Like that's about it, right? Arcane Bolt, So, and then Bait and Trap. You complete this battle tactic if 2 or more friendly units retreat this turn and 2 or more friendly units made a charge move this turn. Not if you were playing a non-Maw Crusher list with more brutes and more Ardboys, I could see this being good, where you're getting in fights with your all your different units all over the place, So it's like, oh, I'm gonna retreat here, and then charge in. Like I'm gonna retreat with 2 units of Ardboys and then charge in with 2 units of brutes. I could see this being better, but in my list with a Maw Crusher, it's like I'm not retreating anywhere, especially not 2 units. I'm not retreating 2 units. I retreated some units over the course of the game, but probably not 2 in a game, and particularly not at once, followed up by 2 charges. So, wasn't a big fan of that. So, generally speaking, Magical Dominance was my turn 1. My turn 2 was often, if I was being defensive, it was Sneak Up. And if I was being aggressive, it was that's our turn now. Okay, let me break this down a little bit differently. If I was being defensive, Magical Dominance was my normal turn 1, Sneak Up was my normal turn 2, either That's Our Turf Now, Intimidate the Invaders, or Let Into the Maelstrom was turn 3, Wait for It Lads was normally on turn 4, and then by turn 5 it was either That's Our Turf Now or Intimidate the Invaders. Those were my normal games and my plan. If I was being aggressive, it was usually That's Our Turf Now, followed by Intimidate the Invaders or Let Into the Maelstrom. That was like turn 2, turn 3. Turn 4 was often Wait for It Lads, and Sneak Up was whenever I felt like I couldn't get a different tactic. Gobsprack and the Killbow were always within 3. In my mind, I was just like, they always have to end within 3 of terrain. Always. And they did. So it was, when I was being aggressive, it was just a back shelf battle tactic that I could get whenever I wanted. Oh, and before I just end this video, I'm not going to make a video for Grand Strats, but WoW was great. I would never pick a different one. So, speaking of which, like, subscribe, what?